of the season. What's on second? A true baseball finale.
Oh, I like that. There we go.
Because I'm an original.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's a good idea.
Hey.
All right, the Tube of the U is live. And we are ready to have some fun. All right.
Are you sharing it?
I am. I already have it set up, so we'll just let it run live and we'll record this because that's what we need to do for the show. And then we'll be ready to rock and roll.
I'm ready when you are.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition, the Labor Day edition, holiday edition of What's on Second, a true baseball podcast. Michael and I are back in the booth. We're actually here on the diamond on a holiday. We haven't got anything going on, so we said, let's do a show.
we do not get holiday pay here on the baseball pod.
We do not. We do not. We just do this for everybody else's benefit and their love and loyalty. So, we're here. Michael, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic. A little tired from a long day out in the sun, but we love it. I'll take that vitamin C.
We do love it. We love the vitamin C. We love where everything's going. And it's been an interesting week of baseball, to say the least.
Oh, yeah.
Off air, you and I were both talking about teams that have already been eliminated here just recently. We mentioned the Mets, the Nationals, both already eliminated. As well as the Rockies. I'm sure Oakland has got to be.
The A's were eliminated on the first pitch of the season, so that's the way it is.
Kansas City was eliminated on the second pitch, so it's all good. It all equals out. The funnier thing is, I was looking today. The Oakland has a negative run differential of negative 1 million. It's actually negative 296 to put it in perspective, but Kansas City's is not much better at negative 178. That's wild. That's a wild time.
It's wild, and it's kind of crazy too that Kansas City, by technicality, is a worse team than the A's are now. The A's have
by a half game or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, they've got one more win than Oakland, but also one more loss. So in a sense, it's worse, but Kansas City's winning percentage, I think, is 309, and Oakland's is 302 or something like that.
Yeah, super solid winning percentages all the way around.
However, did you see that Oakland I don't know how much truth was to this rumor, but I did see somewhere that Oakland might share a stadium with the Giants until their Vegas stadium is done.
With the San Francisco Giants?
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
It'd be interesting, but why do you need to do that? If you can play a game in the Coliseum, you might as well.
Yeah, I was going to say it because they don't want to re-up the lease. That's why. Yeah. They can't re-up the lease, and they're not going to, and Oakland's not going to let them just play game by game until they leave. They're going to want either the up lease, or they're going to say, no, poo-poo kachoo, get out of here. Go find another stadium to share or something along those lines. I mean, at that point, if you're not going to be in Oakland, why not go to a place that is a minor league team and go fill out stadiums out? The team is not that good anyway. Let's be honest, but you could bolster some local economies that way and kind of do some good deeds. Seeing as you were crap to Oakland, you might as well pay back some dues, in my opinion.
That's a valid point. That would also be my. Are you sure that they would really bolster the economy because it's the A's and they've barely been able to?
Who they would bring in? It's not about the A's themselves. It's who the other team is that they're playing against.
Yeah,
they are in the AL West, which is a very stout division, as we've talked about in the recent weeks. Considering Seattle, Texas, Houston, even with LA being LA, still really good teams in there. So. Just thinking about it, even if you don't get anybody else, you just look at the division play out of those guys, it would be infinite. It would definitely draw people. I mean,
Oh,
those are
absolutely.
huge rosters, and then not to mention sprinkle in some other teams because they're definitely not going to just play their division the entire time. They would be ready if they weren't ready for the stadium to be built. I mean,
Mhm.
honestly, it's a conundrum to begin with. I don't even know if they've even agreed to leave yet. It's like we hear rumors and we're pretty sure they're done. I mean, all signs are pointing to it, but they still haven't made an
Yeah.
official decision yet. It's kind of wild to us that
Yeah.
what are they doing here?
I think it was voted on in Vegas, and so I'm pretty sure all the nuts and bolts have been tightened, and now they're just waiting for the I's and T's to be dotted and crossed.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that's the case too. There's no reason it should not be the case.
Yeah.
So, but what do we got on the lineup card today, Michael? Even though we just jumped into a topic, so why not? This is what we do here on the show. We kind of just do our thing, but
Go with the flow. All
yeah,
right.
all
We have
day
a little
long.
bit of we have a little bit of structure, but for the most part, it's go with the flow. So the structure part is going to be the usual. We're going to have a high and low segment here for you real quick. And Richie's got just a couple of block talks for us. So we'll see what kind of episode we were able to crank out here and have fun with it. But before we get into this lead off portion, we wanted to bring up this crazy kind of waiver deadline that, I mean, potentially could have some ramifications in the AL Central, the worst
Mhm.
division in the history of baseball, or at least the worst season for a divisional
I wasn't gonna go there either.
race.
Dang, he brought it upon himself.
Oh, I will in a heartbeat. I know it's a horrible division, but we know from last week that the Angels put Giolito, Renfro, Matt Moore, and Reynaldo Lopez on the trading, or not trading block, the waiver claim wire. And the Guardians swooped in and got Giolito, Reynaldo Lopez, and Matt Moore. So that has been exciting. Both Matt Moore and Reynaldo Lopez have made appearances for Cleveland. Both looked good. I'm not expecting them to go in there and never give up a hit or an earned run. And Giolito makes his debut tonight against Minnesota. So I'm pretty sure this is the season series finale for the Twins and the Guards. So, I mean, that aside, it's got some big ramifications for this central race, because as things stand, the Guardians are 5 games out with, I mean, a month to go. We've got 21, our elimination number is 21. So the Twins' magic number, they got to do that or have a combination of Cleveland losses, Cleveland
Loses.
losses, and
Cleveland loses.
yes, they lose all the time. It's all right. Cleveland losses and Twins wins, and then they clinch the AL Central. And then if you hop over just to give for giggles what the wild card looks like, Cleveland is 10.5 back in that race, and the elimination number for, I believe, just the third wild card spot is 16. But that uphill climb that they would have to do to even entertain that, it's just not going to happen even with Giolito. So we've got to hope that, you know, he can keep the team in these games, that the injured pitchers come back and can give us innings, which Cal Quantrill actually did. He
Yep.
looked good in his last start. So, you know, obviously he's on the team, and I know he's a good guy at the end of the day. So I want to see him keep doing it.
And you need
But
him to do it right now.
we need him to do it. But Ramon Laureano's looked fantastic. Yeah, sure. He's not hitting the cover off the ball, but he's getting some decent hits when necessary. He's taking walks, and his defense has been outstanding. So that was one of those moves that I'm glad they did when they picked him up from the A's, and we've got him for at least another year or two. So it's just a bonus. But did you have any thoughts on that, or
No, I was going to ask you. So I agree. This is a big series. I think you're right. I believe it is the series finale. Looking at everything here, maybe one. It's got to be the series finale. I don't think they even have time to make up any more time or put any more in there. So looking at everything here, 5 games back. Very doable. Very,
Yep.
very doable. Is success, in your opinion, on this series, because they got to do something here, is success 2 out of 3, or is success got to be you got to sweep it?
Success to me is 2 out of 3.
Okay.
I mean, obviously a sweep
Well, it's
really
ideal. Yeah. I mean,
oh yeah,
ideally, yeah.
because if they sweep them, they're 5 games back. In a head-to-head series, 2 games are end up being the difference. So if Cleveland wins tonight, I think they're 3 games back, or I no, it's a full game is what the difference is. So if
Mhm.
Cleveland wins tonight, they're 4 games back. If they sweep it out,
Right.
then they're only 2 back,
2
with
back.
still
Exactly.
a decent amount of games left to go, which then you've got to look at or take into account the strength of schedule,
Mm-hmm.
which the next 4 that Cleveland has are on the West Coast playing the Angels. So a
Mm-hmm.
series, in all honesty, I want to say we should sweep, but we need to take at least 3 out of 4. Then we
Or
go to
at the worst, you got to split them.
yeah. Then we go on to the Giants in San Francisco before we get a real big test in the Rangers coming to Cleveland, a 3-game set taking on Texas before heading out to Kansas City one more time for the year, which that should at least minimum be 2 out of 3, if not a sweep. And then we have another massive test in a 4-game series against the Orioles, a day off, and then 2 against the Reds before ending the season battling Detroit. So
There's a
Cleveland,
lot of tough games in there, but I also will say this: the Giants are on their downward skid right now, so this is a good time
yep,
to go get them. As they sit right now, they're out of the playoffs, which is just wild again to think about. Because I know if you've watched our YouTube, that shows out there, or some of the clips on our Instagram, we talked about it. They were my down team last week.
yep,
They're still just as down, which is really sad. It's atrocious right now. That it's just an implosion happening out there.
hmm
But they're just falling off the map, and they're falling further and further behind. Luckily for them, they're only a half game back of that third wild card slot in the NL. Really, it's become now, 2 teams battling for the top wild card spot. So who's going to get the home field advantage on it? And then really the rest battling for that third wild card spot, where we have 2 tied right now in Arizona and Miami. So
yep.
it's just wild. But Giants right now, good team to go get at this moment. I think that they're very gettable right now. I think there's a lot of positive aspects here that you guys could get. I think I wouldn't be surprised. Now, it all depends on this series. You guys lose this series, I'm chalking it up. I think you're done. They win this series, I will tell you right now that I would be back in on the Cleveland Guardians being a playoff team.
I will say that Minnesota has a easier remaining schedule. After Cleveland, they go back home for 3 against the Mets, which I mean, obviously the Mets season has been atrocious. It's been the
Of course.
most opposite thing of what they were hoping and expecting, understandably so.
Right.
But now that they've been eliminated from the East, and in all honesty, eliminated from the wild card as well, because they're not going to make the playoffs. They are a dangerous team for contenders because you can't sleep on them. Uh,
Correct.
Pete is heating up right now and playing well. Lindor seems like he's been playing well. So I don't think you can sleep on them now. Then they have the next series is against the Rays. So that's going to be another hard series for the Twins. But then after that, it's all below 500 teams. They have a 4-game set in Chicago against the White Sox. Then they have, well, that's almost. They have 3 after the White Sox against the Reds. So that's not going to be a cakewalk. But then they have 3 at home against the Angels, then another 3 games against the Athletics, before ending the season in Colorado against the Rockies. So as long as Cleveland takes 2 of 3, there's hope, obviously. If they
Right.
sweep them, it's, I don't want to say
Game
crunch
on
time.
almost. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if Cleveland takes 2 or 3, it's game on because it's
Yeah.
only 3 back. And at the end of the day, it's game on now, only being 5 back because that magic number is too high to be comfortable with. I don't know if I can give a lot of credence to the White Sox just because, I mean, the pitching
They're
is,
awful. Yeah.
they're awful, but their offense still can put up numbers. The
Yes,
Reds
that's
are the
true.
Reds. The Angels have a guy named Shohei Ohtani, so with that bat in the lineup, you can never count them out.
Nope.
And then, I mean, I kind of expect Minnesota to sweep Oakland, and then who knows with Colorado, but it's going to be a fun stretch. And excuse me, if Cleveland ends up not making the playoffs this year, I mean, let's just hope they end the year strong so they can end it on a high note. It'll be
Yeah.
disappointing if they miss the postseason, but at least they can say, "Hey, we turned it around." But to play a little bit of, like a hard ass, in all honesty, if they miss the playoffs, it's on them.
Well, of
There's no
course,
one to
yeah.
blame but themselves because there's been so many games where, like, I mean, at the beginning of the season, when they
Mhm.
had so many series losses, then so many other games that Class A blew, or the bullpen, uh, the hold guys in the eighth inning would either give up the lead or give the team the lead. So
Right.
I think there's hope. I'd need to see them take over first, even if it's just for like a day, and then the rest of the way, one day one team's in first, the next day the other one's in first. I
Mhm.
need to see that before I really can believe that they're going to be contenders. Getting Giolito, having Matt Moore and Lopez help out the bullpen is fantastic. But it doesn't matter if you have a rotation of Clayton Kershaw, prime Justin Verlander, prime, healthy Shohei. Like, you can have the best top
Right.
5 pitchers in the game. If you can't score more than 2 to 3 runs, you're probably
Yeah.
going to be in the position that they're in right now. So,
Which we've talked about all year has been their kiss of death right now, is
is the
just
offense.
not scoring enough runs. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I like what they did. It definitely can help them. They just need to show it and produce the results.
I was kind of sad. I kind of hoped the Phillies picked up Reynaldo Lopez. I was kind of hoping to steal him.
Yeah.
I don't think Giolito was ever in the cards for Philadelphia, even though I wouldn't have minded him. But I don't think I know Matt Moore wasn't, even though he was a former Philly for a brief stint. But
Well,
I'm happy to see that they, I think the Guardians made nice moves there. I think those are great pickups for them. Again, though, I keep on looking at this thing, and it's exactly your point. Where's the bats? The pitching is never the question with this team. It's always, do they have the bats to get the job done?
And I mean, in that same breath too, you can say that the pitching isn't an issue, but Bieber has not looked as sharp as he has. Quantrill obviously hasn't. Plesac got sent down. The only starter that has been a mainstay got shipped off because the team, honestly, at the end of the day, did the right thing and sold high on him before his market could potentially crash down. So all the pitchers, I mean, Stefan has had a rocky year. Class A, they all, I can understand, feel that pressure because like it seemed like every single game this regular season has been game 7 of the World Series with the game the tying run and the go-ahead run on base, because the pitchers are under that much pressure. Oh my God, we have a lead. I can't give up one hit. Heaven forbid they give up a hit and they completely lose. They forget who they are.
Right.
So, I mean, no matter how this season ends and turns out, I'm not. I'll be disappointed if they don't make the playoffs, but they're a sophomore team for the most part.
True.
learn from the mistakes. Honestly, I like what Chris Valleca has done, their hitting coach, but it might be time to get a new philosophy in there, not necessarily go away from what they did so well last year. You know, those guys that are not pure power hitters like a Stephen Kwan or a
Hmm.
Miles Straw, like don't stray too far from what you are. You know, get
Right.
on base, manufacture runs, move the runner up, you know, do those smart, you know, honestly kind of old school baseball plays.
Right.
And then what the Guardians need to do, hope that Laureano regains his power stroke. Um, you know, just hope and pray that Josh Naylor keeps up this year that he's having, and honestly, the year he had last year into next, and try to go out and get another bat would be my thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a wild thing to keep seeing it happening and seeing them just be on that cusp and just not want to get over that hump right now this year for whatever
Mhm.
reason. It's not, and not for lack of trying, obviously. I'm not saying it that way, but they just keep on hitting that wall that keeps putting them at like 500 or just sub
Mhm.
of it. And you know, it's tough, and automatically you're going to get a wild card game to happen. Even whoever wins that central is going to be in that wild card game.
Yeah.
So, or wild card series, obviously it's three
Yeah.
games, but it's just one of those wild things that you just don't know what's going to happen. But when you think about it, you're going to have, luckily, because you're the central, you'll have the home field advantage, whether it's Minnesota or
Cleveland.
Cleveland. But you're either going to face Texas or Houston at this point.
Yay.
Yeah, like neither one of those are good options. So, and they're in a dogfight right now, as a matter of fact, as we record this show. So, I mean, it's wild to think about, but
Um,
I think the moves are the right moves, though. I think
yeah.
buying low on buying low on Giolito, buying low
So
on those guys are great.
So, couple last minute things to point out, or just to say before we get into the meat and potatoes of this episode. I'm glad you brought it up that way. So, you know, Cleveland got torched because they had an unreadable trade deadline where they sold Bell to the Marlins, who completely turned around and
Yeah.
remembered who he is. Then you trade Ahmed Rosario to the Dodgers. I think that was just a honestly whatever move. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not going
got
to
him off the
really.
books.
Yeah, it's not going to hurt us at the end of the day. But then you also trade Savali to the Rays, and you don't understand what's going on. You didn't help the team out at all. You helped the future potentially, but not the now. And then you go around at the waiver deadline and arguably maybe win the waiver deadline day.
Hmm.
But it honestly, that was a fantastic move because you don't have to give a single player or prospect up for not just Giolito, but Reynaldo Lopez and Matt Moore as well. And you only pay a couple $1 million, you know, because since it's a waiver claim, you pay the remainder of the salaries for the rest of the year. So honestly, it was a brilliant move. Maybe a
Yeah.
little bit of a last ditch effort, but because of the division they're in, why the heck not? You know, this
Yeah.
could
Why not?
potentially mean, yeah, this could put them over the hill.
I was
Th-
sad that I thought the one thing they missed on, and I think that's and it probably is based on the waiver list, is
Renfro.
Renfro. Yeah, I think
I mean, in
Renfro would have been
theory,
a great pickup for them.
I don't think they necessarily missed on him because if they were able to get those three from Anaheim, they could have probably gotten Renfro as well.
I
Um,
just don't. I'm not sure how exactly this is the one
yeah,
thing on baseball that I have a tough time figuring out, because normally, like, how we see waivers is it goes down the list of each player and it goes down that list, and then you make a claim and then you go to the bottom of the list.
yeah,
Well, baseball, there's obviously something about that you're allowed to make multiple claims, because there's no way, if you were talking about running that list multiple times, there's no way that you end up with all three of those guys. I just
yeah,
can't believe you're the only team that wanted them. Like,
yeah.
I
No,
can't.
so yeah, I agree. I will say that I think Giolito would have maybe we haven't even seen him pitch yet for Cleveland, but I think he would have been a little bit more relaxed if Philly were to per se claim him. because he knows he doesn't need to be perfect night in and night out. But if Cleveland can somehow pull a rabbit out of their butt and make it into October, think of that potential pitching matchup that Texas or Houston would have to go against. I mean, game one, Lucas Giolito, I will take that 100% of the time. Then game two, Tanner Bybee, who has been honestly having a fantastic year. Game three, either Tristan McKenzie or Shane Bieber, which at bat just sent a notification they're both going to be facing live batters this week. So
I was going to say, why would you, I would structure that a little differently. I would say I would go health, all things considered. Let's imagine they're all healthy. Because that obviously dictates this whole thing. Because I would tell you to put, I would put Bieber at 1. He's the ace of the staff. I know he hasn't had a great year, but it's kind of like Nola. I mean, he's the ace of that staff. He always has been. He always will be until he's gone. McKenzie 2, Giolito 3. I'd put Giolito at 3 because I don't want to put all the pressure on. I want to let Bieber go out there and cook first. I want to let McKenzie be second. I want Giolito to be my insurance policy at that point. And then I can take Bybee and I can either save him if I need to, or I can have him go out to the bullpen for, God forbid, an emergency spot in for a game 3. And then if you make it to the next thing, you can honestly start the rotation depending on how many days and what the case is with the wild card. Yeah. I would start with Bybee then maybe, or maybe he's day 2 or whatever it is, but that could set up that rotation greatly. I mean, granted, the way you had it set up, there's nothing wrong with it either. I think there's no bad answer. You have 4 quality pitchers right there that are ready to go in any stretch of the imagination, but Bybee's also a rookie. So I don't know how many innings his arm is going to have in him, and how his stuff's going to get deflated as we go along here. I don't think he needs to be set down or anything like that. I think he's perfect, but I wouldn't be putting him in a playoff crunch as a rookie is maybe not my best move in a wild card series. In a 7-game or a 5-game series, I'll gladly roll the dice with him and let him play. But in a 3-game series, I don't know if I want to take that risk. I want to put some proven arms in there. That makes sense.
That. Last thing is there was some news that came out a few hours ago that could potentially be a pain in the Dodgers side. Julio Urias has been arrested on domestic violence charges.
Oh, geez. Oh, man. And what is it with these LA pitchers?
I don't know.
Bauer, Urias now. I mean, not Kershaw. Obviously, Kershaw's a great guy, but
but I mean, a lot of these young kids too. Who knows? Maybe it's this fame and status getting to their heads. I don't know, but
Urias is a free agent this year too, isn't he?
Yeah,
I think he is.
So
I think he's up this year.
He is not traveling with the team right now. There hasn't been any decision making on like a restricted list or a suspension yet.
Oh, but my goodness.
He is in a little bit of hot water because he's also had an incident with domestic violence prior to this one. So
good. So he's not going to get the benefit of the doubt. You might as well just admit he's going on the list now. I mean, it's kind of more than likely he's going on the list. Like he should not even get a chance to not end up on the list, in my opinion.
Agreed.
That.
But we'll go ahead and go into our main topics of the episode, even though we had a really good, fruitful ramble there. High and low. Richie, do you want to start us off or do you want me to go?
I'll go first. I did. So last week I did teams for hot, and I was thinking about it, and the more and more I thought about it, I was like, I should probably do a player. And I was trying to go through, and I was thinking, man, there's some really good players that are on some really hot streaks right now. A couple, Julio Rodriguez has been out of his mind. All these guys have been playing really well, and there's some guys that have started to take their form and have really started to elevate what has been mediocre years, I would say is probably the best way to put it, to actually having solid years, or at least turning around to like show signs of life. And one of those is a big guy that has come out on fire recently and looks like he's back in the World Baseball Classic. And that is one Trea Turner. Trea Turner in his last 7 games has had 29 at bats, 10 runs, 12 hits, 6 of those hits being home runs for 15 RBIs, a walk. He does strike out 7 times, but that's okay, with 2 stolen bases, which seems a little low, but I mean, he's hitting the ball out of the ballpark. So sadly, you don't get to steal. But an OBP of 438, an average of 414, and a slugging percentage of 1.138. To put this in perspective, in the month of August, he has raised his OPS 100 points. He has raised his average 30 points almost, and he's raised his OBP at least 50 points, I believe is what it was. That's really hard to do, unless you're Julio Rodriguez, in the month of August, because these guys have had at bats. They're not like bench guys that come off and have, your stats get fluctuated. He has been hitting out of this world and looking like the $300 million shortstop that was signing that contract. He seems like he's plus pressing. He's made some mechanical changes. We love a good mechanical change when we see it happen at the at bat. So his mechanics look better. He looks comfortable, and it kind of comes off the back of he had that game in Arizona. I think it was Arizona. I forget which game it was, but he lost the game.
Yeah.
Basically, he had an error. It blew the game. All things considered, not good. Very sad to see. They lose the game. He owns it. He says, I lost that game, and it kills me. He had like an over 5 day. It was killing him. And then he got the standing ovations in the beginning of August when he was back at home. Kind of Philadelphia saying, we've got your back. All of a sudden, the stress and tension looked like it fell off of him, and he just started to hit again. And it's amazing to see. I mean, this is the Trea Turner we all thought we were getting. In the last 15 games, you're looking at, 9 home runs, 21 RBIs, average of 344, OBP of 377. In the last month, you're at 11 home runs, which in a month is pretty darn stout, unless your name is Kyle Schwarber or like those guys that do this on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But 11 home runs, 31 RBIs, 7 walks, and 4 stolen bases, a 328 average, 366 OBP, and a 689 slugging in the last 30 games. He's come alive. It's an amazing thing to see. Yep. So, and playing really good fielding now, like looking like the shortstop that we all kind of know and are used to seeing out there. He's turned what has been a horrible season so far. I mean, let's be honest, we were all going to think we would be lucky if we saw Trea Turner hit 20 home runs. We're just beginning September. He's at 21 now. All of a sudden, he's at 65 RBIs. Do I think he's going to make 100? Probably not. But get him up to 80. I'd call that a win from where he started. Yeah. Average is at 260, considering that we had an average at like 230 at the beginning of August. All these things are huge, and that OPS is shot back up. So it's a great thing to see a guy who has struggled so mightily kind of turn it around and kind of take it on. And it gives you hope that people can play up to those contracts. And while it does stink to have kind of that bad time where nothing works, it seems like in the beginning, these guys are human, even when they sign real life big money deals, and that's awesome. And all power to them. They deserve that money for most of them, I should say. But they are human. Getting adjusted to new places, all that stuff is huge. And it seems like Trea's finally settling in. So happy to say it. So my high player of the week, Trea Turner.
Going off of how you brought your decision making up, I said I'm gonna just go with the guys that kind of stand out from what I've seen from other fans' videos, and I've got the same kind of structure as I did last week. So I'm high on a player and low on a team. Okay. The player that I'm high on is Cody Bellinger. He has just had a resurgent year. You go from, or at least I do, hating him because he was a Dodger and being a Giants fan. Not that I hate the Dodgers. Like, most Giants fans do. You kind of don't root for very many of the guys on that team, but then he goes and signs with the team that I might arguably dislike more than others, and it's the Cubs. But I would be lying if I said it's not been fun to see him turn into the Bellinger of old. Just thankfully, it hasn't been to the detriment of my team personally.
Yeah.
But in his last 7 games, he's had 29 at bats, 5 runs scored, 9 hits, 3 home runs, 9 RBIs, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts, stolen base, at a 310 average, 323 OBP, and slugging percentage of 621 in his last 15. 64 at bats, 10 runs scored, 19 hits, still those same 3 home runs, 20 RBIs, 2 walks, 12 strikeouts, and 2 stolen bases at a 297 clip, with a 313 OBP and 484 slugging percentage. But within the last month, he's had 116 at bats with 22 runs scored, 38 hits, 7 homers, 34 RBIs, 6 walks, 20 strikeouts, 5 stolen bases for a 328 batting average, which is fantastic. An OBP of 352 and an overall slugging percentage in that 30 game span of 569. So sure, it might not be numbers that blow you out of the water, kind of like a Luis Ariz or Shohei or some of these other, big time power hitters. But considering how badly he produced last year for LA, to see him really just get comfortable but in Chicago, honestly, just as a baseball fan, it's been really, really fun to see. And I think it's part of the reason why the Cubs are in the position that they're in, because, even now, just thinking about them as a team, I don't think they're a playoff team, but they keep playing well. Nico Horner's playing great. Ian Happ is, Patrick Wisdom, Cody Bellinger, and then Jeimer Candelario has looked fantastic since going back over there. So I think it's very easy to say, Cody's my high player for the week. So
I love it.
Thank you. With that being said, who are you low on?
Team I'm low on is kind of more on a more than just the week. It's just kind of just been on a spectrum, and it's something we just have to, I know we've briefly talked about it. I mean, I could arguably say I could put the Giants back on that list again, but I'm not going to do that twice in a row. I feel like that's a little bit overkill, even though they're back on another 4-game losing streak and got absolutely blitzed by the Cubs today. Justin Steele just dismantled that lineup. But the team I am low on is the St. Louis Cardinals.
Okay.
Man, just to think about where this team came from last year to where it is now, this team was the leader of the Central. They were hot as all heck going into the playoffs, set their roster the way they wanted to. Everything was going their way. They obviously lose the first game to the Phillies, and then they get beat 2-0 on the second game because Nola just has the number of the Cardinals and knocks them out of the playoffs. And then they come back. They actually are set pretty much most of the roster. Obviously, they lost Pujols and Yachty for retirement. Understandable to see that kind of drop off. Waino says, I'm going to come back for one more ride. And man, if there was ever a disappointing season, I mean, if I was Wainwright, I would have been like, man, I should have just retired last year. Like, I shouldn't have even come back. What am I here for? The locker room's in some sort of flux. There's something wrong with it. Marmol is a lost soul at the manager position. He looked bad last year in the playoffs, but I chalk that up to, first time there. Maybe you get some gutsy decisions. You don't work out, whatever. He had some of the best bullpen arms in the last 2 years. Obviously, they traded Hicks this year. They traded, I think they still have Helsley, if I'm not mistaken. But, they have some of the best arms. They have some of the best talent. And they look so lost. Wilson Contreras has been a nightmare there. I mean, he's awful. And you go to wonder, and he played so well in Chicago. And Chicago obviously was bad last year, but you wonder, does him not being in Chicago, is there something that he was holding back with the Cubs? I mean, I don't want to say it's all one guy, but I'm just saying the guy left a decent team. Chicago was on the way up. They had to get some things done. Obviously, the Bellinger signing, the Dansby signing we talk about all the time, and they made some big moves. But Wilson Contreras signing in St. Louis, which we thought was the right move, we all kind of assumed would be the move for him because that's the right fit. He has lost, not only, we talked about it earlier, he not only lost like being the starting catcher for a while, he lost like the respect of the entire pitching staff. Like, he's a giant baby when he gets called out. He's acting like a child behind the plate, or when balls and strikes don't happen. He's the only catcher I've ever seen literally bark at an umpire because he knows that he's catching on the other side. So he has to kind of play devil's advocate. Yes. Is it frustrating when the calls are wrong? Of course it is. But you can't really get in an umpire's face when you're a catcher because you need those calls to go your way too. So you're trying to play it all, kind of play along the line. He just doesn't care. And that team is bottomed out all the way to the bottom of the NL Central. They're below the Pirates. They're below the Reds, who have had a great year. The Reds have come out of nowhere and kind of shocked us all, but he's below the Reds. You're below Milwaukee's back up top where they need to be and are playing hot, which they were almost going to be my hot team of the week, but I figured player instead this time. But, you know, we talked about the central divisions of both sides being kind of the weakest divisions. Well, you look, the NL Central actually heated up. And now all three divisions, you're talking about 3-team races could be arguably said for any of those divisions. Now, obviously, the East is locked up with the Braves pretty much at this point. The West is pretty well locked up with the Dodgers at this point. But you're talking about teams that have been competitive the whole time with them. It's not like they walked in here and coasted to victory like it was last year with the Dodgers and even the Mets at the beginning of the year last year. So I have the Cardinals for how good their roster is, for how well put together it is, for the bats they have, just for the lack of all that. It's amazing to me. I mean, they have some guys that should not be up on a major league roster. There's no doubt, but it's just unbelievable to me that they went from peak team to just utter dumpster fire in a year. And in a year where they didn't lose much of anything, they lost the 2 older pieces, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And they added things. Like, they added a better catcher. Yachty's great, but as a catch, I mean, he's a great baseball player as far as calling games, but his bat was zapped for the most part. It's unreal to me. So my low team of the week, and really for the year, is the St. Louis Cardinals.
I think that's a very, very valid point. Very fair pick. My low team is going to come from the West Coast this week. They're currently in their last 10, 3 of 7.
We might have had a rant about them last week a little bit.
We might have had a little bit of a rant about them last week with a negative run differential of 58 runs, and that would be the Angels. I think they arguably could be my, just kind of disappointment of the year. I mean, but they've in all reality been a disappointment for how long now? Because you've got a generational player in Trout, and they somehow, by the grace of the baseball gods, pulled another generational talent in Ohtani. So they have 2 generational talents, one of which arguably is better than Babe Ruth, because he did what Babe Ruth couldn't back in his day, and both pitched efficiently and well and hit efficiently and at an all-star level.
Absolutely.
Although there's a chance he never throws another pitch again, which would be sad, but understandable. So all of that said, they, I think one of the things that the Angels lacked was having a complementary roster around both Trout and Ohtani on the defensive side, let alone on the offensive side. But the thing that I feel like Anaheim's missed for the longest time has been pitching. I mean, if they would have gotten Garrett Cole, that would have been, I think, a fantastic addition to have a solid, bona fide number one go-to ace. But you need at least, I would say, to have they would have in that scenario needed to have Cole and then a solid, honest number 2 and 3 guy. But they also need a bullpen, and they had one of the better closers in Raisel Iglesias, and then they traded him.
To Atlanta of all teams. Thank you.
I know that you're so thrilled about it. You have to face him all that often now.
Yeah.
But it's just, it's disappointing to see how badly they have performed this year, and now the fact that they have screwed themselves honestly for the next few years trading. I mean, I get why they traded for the players that they did at the deadline. You want to make a push, but it's going to bite them in the butt. I don't see Ohtani staying there.
No.
He's going to leave. And at that point now, it's not only did you not trade him for a historic haul this year, maybe they should have traded him last year and not only gotten, I mean, it would have been an even more unthinkable return that they'd have gotten for him. So you couple all that together, I would have to honestly think that Trout should consider leaving unless he really truly does not care about playoffs and winning. If he is just content with having all that money, hey, he earned it. If he's content with just being in a comfortable place in Anaheim and he's just truly happy there, all the power to him. But I really, after his comments from the World Baseball Classic, where he said it was fun playing meaningful games, I don't entirely believe that he's going to just sit back and be like, yeah, I'm going to just write out the rest of my prime years and a few of my past prime years on a team that's going nowhere in the next 6+ years, maybe. So they are not looking very good.
It's the only, they need to trade Trout because that's the only way they could even rebuild right now. At this point, he's the only thing of value they had. And look, they've got a lot of good young talent. O'Hoppe, Moniak has come full circle. I'll tell you what, from being a bust in Philadelphia, he went out there, got that change of scenery, and he looks great in LA. To let go of Renfroe and Giolito and all those guys was just an absolute white flag, and also just makes you look like such an idiot organization. I mean, there is nothing that's excusable at that point. I couldn't even understand it to begin with, but just to go all in at the trade deadline and then sell it all for free, like we said, they didn't get anything back for letting Giolito, Renfroe, Lopez, and Moore walk. They let them go for free. It's unheard of. You're talking about talented players. Those are not bums we're talking about. Giolito is a almost guaranteed ace in most staffs, or at least a high-end 2. Reynaldo and Moore have both had elite bullpen seasons. Renfroe's had a decent season. He doesn't hit righties very well, but he hits lefties like a god. He's kind of on that like Jorge Soler track of like, if it's a lefty and he's in there, he's going to hit it to oblivion. So to let them all walk for free is an utter joke. And, Trout, if Trout does stay, that tells you all you need to know. I mean, Trout left out, did not take his chance on free agency. And we all questioned it because we all were wondering what's the case. And maybe he knew Ohtani was going to be Ohtani because I think Ohtani was just coming in at that point, really hadn't burst on the scene as he has now. And that's fair. If that was what your goal was I wanted to see if Ohtani was going to be Ohtani and we could build something around it and us, that's great. But when you look at everything else, there's 2 or 3 young guys that are really good. I think Nito is a great player as well. There's a lot of good young talent there. But Trout can't carry that load anymore. He's been hurt way too often. So something's got to give. He's got to either give up the outfield and he needs to learn how to play first base like Bryce Harper has, or he needs to become a permanent DH, or like at every, or, swap his roles and become more DH for the most part. And then every fifth day or fourth day go out to the outfield, something like
Yeah.
Giancarlo. I mean, it's unbelievable to me. I don't understand that organization at all and where they are. I think they absolutely blew the trade deadline. You mentioned it and nailed it right on the head. It's embarrassing. That team has had so many talented players and they can't ever put it all together. And for health being the biggest reason, but like, what's the common denominator at that point? Like, they all can't just go to LA to die. Like, it doesn't make sense. So maybe you need to take a look in-house and figure out why every big signing you bring in here just does not show up or dies. Like, they hurt themselves all the time, including your studs. I mean, Shohei's about to go on Tommy John 2. Trout's been hurt endlessly since he turned like 27, like, and like the young bones and everything like that have gone away, which is going to happen. He's still in his prime. Like, he's the same age, if I'm not mistaken, as Harper. They're both like 30 years old at the most, if not 30, maybe 31 Trout is or something like that. But this is peak time for these guys. Like, it doesn't make sense how every time he looks like a shell of himself. It's pathetic. It's absolutely inexcusable for any organization. And like I said last week on the rant I had last week, Artie Moreno should lose the team. I'm sorry. They at this point, Angels fans, you demand better. You have to. It's ridiculous at this point.
The Angels fans are a fantastic fan base. They're passionate about their team. They always show up, even though their team's been consistently crap. So, they deserve better. I completely
agree. They have a great ballpark too.
Well, Angel Stadium needs massive repairs, and at this point, it's been around since I think the '60s when Chavez Ravine was built for the Dodgers. So I feel like they could probably use with a new one. But
they need renovations. But I mean, as far as like actual sitting in a ballpark, it's not bad. They probably need renos. Yeah, they need renos. I agree.
But no, it is a nice stadium. But they are my low team for the week. So Richie, what do you got for Bach Talks as we wrap up and round out this episode?
Yeah, so you mentioned Giolito coming out here, and my first thing was here, thinking about it, and I was kind of, surprised that Cleveland took Giolito. The Reynaldo and the Moore thing made sense to me right away, and I thought the Giolito one was interesting because obviously on the way back is I almost said Bidey, but Bieber and McKenzie. Bidey's still healthy. We're keeping him that way, please. So
absolutely,
but with those guys coming back, you're starting to run out of places to put people. I mean, Logan T. Allen should still be, in my opinion, should still warrant having some stuff. You've had great pitching all year as far as starters go. Nobody's really crudded the bed except for Quantrill. And, you and I both agree we could all do without seeing Quantrill ever pitch again for the Guardians. But with Giolito coming in here, it's not really a balk or a walk, more or less. The Balk Talk question is, what would you consider success from Giolito? What are you looking to get out of him? Because Giolito, okay, he had a rough year in Chicago. The White Sox stunk. We got it. We know. He went to the Angels, had one quality start, and then just started getting barraged out there. His stuff just doesn't look like it's playing right now. Again, not saying that he's not talented, not saying it's not there. Something's off, and maybe it's just moving around a lot, because I can only imagine how tough that is.
Yeah.
But he's looking not full. So it's not a block or walk, but what would be considered success in your eyes for Giolito?
Success would be giving us quality starts, which is the success you look for from any starter. Don't go in there, give up one run, and immediately just look defeated. Not saying that every one of the starters this year has done that or anything, but there's been quite a few times where a lot of these starters have come in, or they made a start and they gave up a home run like Giolito did. in the first inning tonight so
I
far.
wasn't gonna bring it up, but yeah.
I have it playing in the corner of my laptop.
It's why I'm peeking up. I have the big inning on right now to
Yeah.
watch them all.
Oh yeah. You know, Lucas is a stud, like you said. He could very well be an ace. He could be a, you know, high end number 2 if that were the case. You know, you just go out there and say, okay, I gave up a run. You know, at some point these guys are going to get at least one, you know, and then it'll be a new game. So I think if he gives us start, you know, a handful of stars, however many he ends up making in his short time, inevitably that he'll be a Guardian. You know, just keep us in it, give us a shot to hopefully score some runs if they can ever remember how to swing a bat and hit a ball. But you know, if they can do that, I think it's good in a positive stint that he would have.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I think that's a fair point. I hope he does well in Cleveland, honestly. And I kind of wish Syndergaard was able to do well there. But again, it's the same thing we saw with Syndergaard all year long. It's breaking balls stuck over the middle of the plate and trying to play off breaking ball off of a 92-mile-an-hour fastball when the breaking ball doesn't break and the fastball has no life or has no extra movement. It just gets tattooed and it just it gives you nothing. It's a shame to see.
I'm glad you brought up the Syndergaard thing, because I think it's a very similar situation where, you know, you try to give Syndergaard a change of scenery and a coaching staff that has really kind of helped turn some of these guys into, you know, pretty good studs. I think the biggest difference is Giolito's in his prime and he's there and he's young. So whereas, you know, Noah's been a little bit out of it. So, you know, we'll just have to kind of wait and see how it plays out.
Yeah, and I would say Giolito's worth a signing for you guys too. I'm not sure if he's a free agent after this year or if he's got control. I can't remember. But regardless, I think it's worth I would give him at least a re-sign look. Even if you don't make the playoffs this year, I think he's very worthwhile to do that because I think he's only 27, if I looked at it correctly. Yeah. So he's definitely got a lot of time left. Looking at some things here, we mentioned the Cubs earlier in the show, obviously with Bellinger being your high player of the week. Looking at things here, the wild card is really narrowed up in the NL on two fronts. There is the battle for first place in the wild card, which is pretty much gone down to two teams, right, as it stands right now, and that would be Philadelphia and Chicago. I believe Philadelphia has a tiebreaker because I think Philadelphia swept them both times they played them or whatever. They were like, Philly got lucky. They played Chicago right when Chicago was still trying to figure themselves out and they weren't this hot ball of fire that they are right now. Oh, yeah. And Philadelphia got them at the time that they were at their lowest. So right before the trade deadline. Now they are a hot ball of fire and they are literally one game back of the top seed here in the NL. If Philadelphia loses today, I'm sure there's some sort of things, but as far as wins go, they would be only one game back of Philadelphia. With that being said, balk or walk, Chicago will be the top wildcard team by the end of the season. Yeah, I know it's a tough call.
I'm gonna balk you on it.
Okay.
I like Philly. I mean, obviously, between Philadelphia and Chicago, Chicago's got the more recent championship, and but Philadelphia was just there yesterday. It's not that Chicago is trying to find their identity. I'm pretty sure they found it at this point. But Philly's starting to heat up. You look at what Trey's doing. If he can consistently put this production out both offensively and defensively, that's going to take a lot of pressure off of other defenders and the other bats in the lineup. So all he's got to do is just, you know, excuse me, keep doing what he's doing. It's going to help out the rest of the team. And then, you know, I feel like because of that reason is why Philly will end up being the top wild card spot.
Yeah, I mean, and that's fair. And Philadelphia did all of a sudden learn how to hit with power again. I mean, they just had their highest home run total a month in franchise history because they had, I think
Mhm.
they ended up the month with, I think August, they ended at 55 home runs in the month, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Bryce Harper's getting his power stroke back, which is scary to think about for everybody else. Like he's
Oh
starting
yeah.
to look like the Tommy John is now on its actual healing mend. He's not just a superhero.
Yeah.
So uh with that, I just, it's just interesting to see how tight it is. Um with that being said, going to the other wild card, because I was curious about this, I ask you this question: balk or walk, the AL East will only have two teams represented in the playoffs as opposed to three, like we thought.
I think that one's much more likely. I mean, you look at both division wild card races, there could very easily be a couple of East teams in the American League. Tampa Bay, I think, is going to, by all means, run away with the top wild card spot. They really should with the way they started this year.
Mhm.
But I want to say Toronto can get in there. Obviously, they can. They're a game and a half out of the third spot. Um, but I would be absolutely shell shocked if either one of Texas or Houston missed the postseason, um, with just the hype that they had going into the start of 2023 and how well they played all season long. So I kind of feel like, for the most part, the American League one is set, but then with the National League, I mean, as of today, in all technicality, there's four wild card teams because Miami is tied
Yeah,
with Arizona, but I think Arizona would get the
I think
actual
Arizona has
playoff
the
berth.
tiebreaker. Yeah.
Yeah, either because of the season series or because of interdivisional record.
Yes.
So, I mean, it would be interesting to see for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that now the AL East is pretty much you're only going to see the two teams now, and it's Baltimore and Tampa at this point. I
Hmm.
think because of how logjam the West is, I don't think you can get away with it. I think right now, I mean, all thing you're looking at things right now, I think Cincinnati was winning last I looked against Seattle. Texas and Houston are battling each other. Yeah, Cincinnati's up 6-2 right now. So Seattle and Houston are battling each other, and Houston has taken a commanding lead of that right now. So in the grand scheme of things, after this game, you could see a switch and have all three of them tied. I think would all three of them would be tied at the top of the division, or it would be a half game for Seattle, just based on the loss record. But they would all be like right there. They're all literally
Yeah.
hugging each other. It's nuts to think about
Hmm.
how tight that division is, and I don't see any one of them falling away in the grand scheme of things. And a team like Toronto, who needs to put their foot on a team like Oakland right now, is in the bottom of the ninth, battling against an Oakland team and struggling. And
Yeah.
you shouldn't struggle against Oakland. I'm sorry, you can't. Yeah,
Yep.
if you want to be a playoff team, you can't struggle against Oakland. You gotta take them out. Not saying that you won't lose games to those guys. You will. That's the worst teams in the league win 60 games or so in the year. But
Hmm.
you cannot, if you want to be a playoff team, lose multiples at least to those kind of guys. So
Yep.
uh that one. That is really all I have for block talk. I didn't know if you had any block talkers at all for this one.
I do not have any this week. If anything, my final point will be I'm really glad that the Guardians got Cole Calhoun. He's not hitting like 500, but he's kind of like the Giambi of 2013, where he's just getting timely hits when it's
Yeah.
necessary. So I'm hoping in the offseason that is a bat that we resign so that we can at least have him come off the bench and be a good veteran, which this team needs.
Yeah.
But on that note, guys, we will end it here. We want to thank you for coming out to another edition of What's on Second. a true baseball podcast. It's been a great episode. I mean, you guys know all season long we ramble. We had a really good discussion at the beginning of the episode before we even got into our lineup. So, you know, it's going to be a lot of fun. Last week's episode hasn't been finished yet. I'm currently in the midst of editing it. So this week, in all likelihood, you're going to get 2 episodes for the podcast listeners. If you primarily get our content through YouTube, you've already had this week's episode, so it's no big deal. But once again, guys, thanks for watching us. Hit up those socials. Let us know what you think about our discussions. Let us know what you want us to talk about. Give us ideas that you'd like to see us try out next year and 2024. And we hope to see you out there on the diamond next week.